The second paper from Canson I'm testing is the Heritage Cold Pressed Grano Fino. It's a more subtle texture than the rough, and I'm using my New Zealand Silver Eye as a test subject. I've already drawn out this bird on a piece of sketch paper for other swatch tests, so I'm just tracing it through on the light box, recording the barest amount of outline details necessary. I must say that pencil works well on this paper. I have heard it's good for multimedia. Got a nice clean outline, and I'm laying in a loose, not too heavy background wash of phthalo green and sap green with a little bit of Prussian blue. The paper seems to stay moist for a sort of reasonable time. As I go to paint wet, I'm wet in the upper areas. It's already dried, so paint lasts less moist on the surface than ash. Paint does mix in well with other colours, bleeds pretty seamlessly. Paint has a nice granulation. Trying these blooms, it seems that they are blurring to indifference. Bloom is often a technique that relies on timing. If you do it too early, they just fade to a lighter splotch of colour. May have been my problem with this. Some secondary blooms. We'll see if we can retain any cauliflower definitions. I'm laying in my sap green and Hansa yellow, lime olive for the neck and back and wings. A little bit of Payne's grey for the dove grey back and throat and tail, and oliving up that lime paint a little bit. It is allowing me to rework painted areas quite seamlessly, so like a lot of quite highly sized papers, it doesn't stain much. Glazing seems to have worked well for the shadow areas on the rock, and I'm able to rework in paint softly without revealing hard lines of brushstrokes underneath. The mascara mask bleeds out with a droplet of water on the edge of it very, very nicely. So it's taking the detail area around the eye quite politely. It's not bleeding out in a blottery fashion. Again, it's a pretty highly sized paper, so I wouldn't expect it to bleed excessively. And then once again, second layers of paint can be feathered seamlessly. All in all, it's interesting. I am noticing though that the colours I've laid on first are fading a little bit as they absorb into the paper. So that, if you want to do intensely coloured watercolours, is going to be a problem for some users. I tend to do a lot of African wildlife, so my colouring is often subtle, but I do like intense shaded areas to stay deep. So I think this paper may dry a little muted for my overall taste. Just doing some detailing on the wings, and now I'm going to start glazing. It glazes very, very nicely so far. We'll see when I go over the bloomed areas if it lifts, reactivates, or obscures that too much. It's keeping some of the structure underneath, and that was quite a heavy layer of glaze, so it's performing quite well. There's no tendency to pill on third and fourth layers of glaze. It's not muddying up the colours underneath, so in terms of paper for glazing on, probably so far superior to ash. dropping in some secondary blooms to see how they take, reglazing some leaves, darkening the background a little bit. All in all, quite a polite paper. I was able to get enough colour density in the end. I'm not sure quite how it ranks overall. Considering it as a potential replacement for Arche, but I don't think it's got any qualities that are screaming out for me to replace Arche. You know, Arche just holds a little bit more intensity of colour. It bleeds just as well. This paper glazes a little bit better, but again, paper is temperamental, so I don't think it's enough to make it a substitute.